Week 3 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few defense DST units I would drop this week. The first one, the Cleveland Browns. So the Browns, I thought they would have a great ball game and a top 5 performance in Week 2 versus the New York Jets, especially at the dog pound at home in the home opener, but that wasn't the case, and they lost a heartbreaker. They were up 30-17 with 2 minutes left, and then the Jets, they get a deep ball to Corey Davis, and then an onside kick and drive down the field and win. So right here, this Brown defense can't stop anyone so far in the early going. I know Week 3 here, they got a decent matchup versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, that their offense hasn't looked great. But right here, this Brown team, I can't trust them. And Jacoby Brissett, he's put the defense in some bad positions as well. So Week 1 in Carolina, 24 points allowed, 4 sacks and into. And Week 2 versus the Jets, 31 points allowed, 2 sacks and a fumble recovery. So if the Jets could drop 31 points on your defense, any offense could. They got Joe Flacco back there at quarterback, who obviously he's way beyond his prime, and a guy who's not mobile at all, but he held his own in that ball game, and the Jets won. And right here, I know Mitchell Trubisky ain't a great quarterback either, but they got better weapons over there in Pittsburgh than they do in New York, so I think any team could score on them. Obviously, it could have been fluky as well, but the first 2 weeks versus mediocre to poor offenses, this Brown defense hasn't been good in terms of fantasy football, and I would drop them this week. The next defense is the Baltimore Ravens. So the Ravens, they got carved up by Tagovailoa and that Miami Dolphin offense. And that offense has tons of speed and amazing playmakers. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki's a talented tight end, and Chase Edmonds in the backfield, but it's inexcusable. They were up 34-5-14 in the fourth quarter, and their secondary just gets torched in that ball game. 42 points allowed, a sack, 2 interceptions, and a return touchdown is which saved their day. But the first couple weeks here, they haven't looked all that great. I know Week 1, it was at the New York Jets, but that's not saying much. 9 points allowed, 3 sacks, and into a fumble recovery. And now they got to go to New England. I definitely think it's going to be a grind-out type of game, but after what I saw in that Week 2 ball game, this defense can't be trusted. And the way they just let guys get behind them in the secondary over there when you're up 35-14. And the rule is you don't give up anything deep when you got a lead like that. You play some prevent and you give up the short yardage. You make teams try to work. And obviously that wasn't the case in Week 2 with Baltimore. So right now, after getting the doors blown off in Week 2 versus Miami and coming up with pretty decent offenses besides New England, Week 3 New England, Week 4 Buffalo, Week 5 Cincinnati. Those are some tough matchups in Week 4 and 5 for this Baltimore team here. And their defense I can't trust. Yeah, they could turn things around. Yeah, it could have been a fluky game, but why would you want to play a defense or even own them on your roster after what we saw in Week 2 in the third and final defense I look to drop this week's the Indianapolis Colts. I got a few questions during Week 2 about this Colt defense, and after what we saw in Week 2 versus Jacksonville offense that obviously only has 2 playmakers really, Christian Kirk and James Robinson, and Travis Etienne, who's been decent so far this year. They're a defense that should have made plays, and they didn't do anything. 24 points allowed and no fantasy points in that one for this Colt defense. So the first week of Houston versus a weak offense, 20 points allowed, 3 sacks, a fumble recovery. Week 2 with Jacksonville, like I said, no fantasy points. And now Week 3, you got the Kansas City Chiefs coming up. There's no reason to hold on to them. If Jacksonville had a pretty solid game versus them, just imagine what Patrick Mahomes and this Chief offense will do for this Colt team. And it's an indoor game in Indianapolis. So right here, this defense has come up short. But down the line later this season, I think you could revisit them once they get things going and this offense figures things out. Because the offense has been the problem for the most part, putting the defense in bad positions and a lot of quick drives where they're off the field, the offense, and the defense tiring out. But right now, I can't trust this Colt defense after what we've seen the first 2 weeks. That's a few defenses I'd look to drop here for Week 3 of the fantasy football season.